You cannot exit the box by trying to see within the box. What the heck does that mean? Well, we're going to discuss exactly what that means and show you how to operate outside the box of reality to create anything you want. So keep listening. Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Today, I have a great episode for you, something I'm really excited to talk about. And honestly, this is probably one of my favorite topics at the moment to talk about. And it's something that I've talked about to our high-level students, so people in our mentorship program. Maybe I've talked to our Video 4X students a little bit about it. But it's something that we definitely need to start talking more about as we evolve the Video 4X. And we evolve messaging. And we evolve our talks of entrepreneurship and mindset. And so today's really going to hopefully give you guys a different perspective on how to look at life. And there's a lot of different ways that this topic today can be applied to your life. It can be applied, everything from your marketing to your messaging, to the way you see the world, to your mindset, to your subconscious. And we're going to try to talk about all those things, but the context for you that I want you to look at this for, or the way I want you to look at this, is basically look at how does this play in your life and how does it stop you from becoming a powerful entrepreneur. And my intention with this episode is to help you guys become a powerful entrepreneur, but also take these concepts and slowly give them to the new generation if you have kids. These are some of the things that we talk about today, are some of the things that I actually talk about with my kids. Not to the level I'm going to talk with you guys about it, because even most adults sometimes can't grasp what I'm going to talk about. And so I told Matt before the episode, I'm like, I really hope I don't mess this up. And I explain it in a way that makes sense. So why don't we just hop right into it? And just to give you guys a fair warning, we're going to go through about 6. Let me look at my notes here. Yeah, about 6 steps. We're going to apply this to a very, surface level way, the first 5 steps. And then step 6, we're going to get into the woo. So if you're not someone who really cares about the woo or going down the rabbit hole or things like that, well, you can probably just stop listening after step number 5. But step number 6, we're going to get a little cray. So we're going to go, and cray in a good way. I don't mean crazy, but I mean just talking about, we're just going to go down the rabbit hole. So what is this topic? What am I talking about here? Well, I'm talking about the box of reality. And we always hear the thought, think outside the box. Now, one of the things we talked about in a previous podcast, or a podcast coming up, is that what happens in our life and what happens as business owners when we try to think our way out of things, when we try to think of the solution, when we try to think about what we need to do next, is that when we think, our thinking only comes from things that we know, right? So our mind can't think outside of what it already knows, meaning that when you try to think your way to a new solution, it's really difficult because you haven't created that new solution yet. You haven't gone through that new solution yet. So it's almost impossible for your mind to actually figure out what the solution is. It might come up with trial and errors, and it might come up with ideas that you might want to try based off of what you already know, but you won't know the answer. You won't know how to actually do it. And then once you do it, well, then now you've kind of elevated your mind. So when you try to create something, your level of thinking is now higher. But the point is when you're trying to create something, which is outside the box, right? When you're trying to create something outside the box of your reality, so your reality, the way in which you see the world, the way the world appears to you, when you're trying to create something outside of that reality, which is what we're all trying to do as business owners. We're all trying to do that, right? We're all trying to build a business or create a course or create a program or create a service or create a product or create some kind of business that does not exist yet. And we don't really know how to do it. That's why businesses are always evolving, right? So your business is getting bigger and stronger and you're getting a better system put in place. Why? Because you can't start at Z because your thinking mind doesn't know how to even get there. right? So what's happening is there's so many entrepreneurs who are trying to create something outside the box with inside the box thinking. And you cannot exit the box by trying to see within the box. And what we're going to go through is something that I got in the silence. You guys hear me talk about the silence all the time. This episode basically came to me by sitting in the silence, and I journaled the whole thing, and then I put it into a podcast episode. And I want to talk about these steps with you guys. And if you're watching the video, I'm going to apologize now for continually looking down at my notes instead of you at the camera, just because I just don't want to really miss anything. And so we all do this as humans and as business owners. Every single day is we try to create, but it becomes a problem when we try to think, because again, our level of thinking only stems from what we already know. So in order to do this, let's go through the steps. So first of all, let's talk about what is the box. The box is basically your version of reality. And there's a lot of different ways this happens. So, we have experiences in life where if we fail at something a certain amount of times, we might start to think things like, oh, I can't do that, or it's impossible to do that. And it's not that you can't do it or it's impossible. It's that the thinking mind or the subconscious just automatically goes, boom, you can't do this. Boom, that doesn't make any sense. Boom, it's not possible. Boom, you're a failure. And we never really think about that, right? And it does this every day, all the day. Every day, all day. Our subconscious mind will automatically create things for us, whether they're true or not. And this is all created through experiences, authorities. Our parents have told us X, Y, and Z. Our parents told us we're not going to amount to anything, or that we are going to amount to something. And we start to take those on as truths. And if you have kids and you know how powerful this is, your kids will literally believe anything that you say. And when you start to tell them things, even things about themselves, they start to form their box, the walls, right? They start to form what is real and what isn't. And they never question it. And we know this is working. We know this is happening on a subconscious level, because right now, you guys have probably already formed some kind of decision about this podcast episode. You have already thought things like, this is interesting, it's not interesting. This is good, it's not good. This is stupid, this is not stupid. This is whatever, right? But you guys didn't automatically form, you did automatically form that decision, but you didn't consciously form that decision. Meaning, if you think so far this podcast episode is interesting, you didn't sit down there and go, how do I really want to feel about this podcast episode? I think I kind of want to feel that it's interesting. Well, what does interesting actually mean? How am I going to qualify this as interesting or not? What are the qualifications for interesting? Is my version of interesting the same as everyone else's? How do I know if this is really interesting? We didn't do that, right? Your subconscious just automatically created a feeling for you, and then you're going to move through the rest of your day and the rest of your life with that as a part of your reality. You're going to literally move forward thinking this was interesting or not interesting or whatever it was. And that happens all the time, every day. Our subconscious does that. And this is science, this is brain science, where our subconscious does that in order to save energy, because there's so many things happening every day that we need to form decisions on what it means. And that's what humans are. They're meaning-making machines. When something happens, we give it a meaning. When something happens, we go, oh, that means this, or I'm going to feel this way, or I'm going to do that. But we can't consciously do it all the time because it's every single day of every single minute. So the subconscious, in order to save energy, automatically starts to form all of these decisions for us without us thinking about it, but we never take them a minute to go back and to question it. And where it gets a little dangerous is that we have to ask ourselves, where does the subconscious actually create that decision from? And you go, oh my gosh, from past experiences, from past indoctrinations, from the past version of reality, right? So our subconscious will automatically start to create all this stuff, and it just stacks on each other. Now, I want to just tell you guys right now, basically what it is it all comes down to beliefs. We start to form beliefs without realizing that we're forming beliefs, and these beliefs become the walls of the box in which we live. Meaning that if you're trying to accomplish something And your subconscious has put up a wall that literally says you're not going to be able to do that. And you're not aware of it. You're going to have a really hard time being able to create that, which is why I'm saying in order to create something outside the box, we need to shut off the walls in which the subconscious has created for us. So then we can move forward. So for example, I'm always reminded of the story that Dr. Shannon Irvin told me, where she was told her entire life that being rich is bad, and being rich and having money, those people don't care about anyone. And somewhere in her mind, when she was a little girl, not in her mind, but when she was a little girl, her dad had told her that $200,000 means that you're rich. So when she grew her business, she could never get past the $200,000 mark. She kept self-sabotaging. All these things started to happen, and she started to question why. Well, because the box in which she was seeing the world basically had a wall up that said $200,000 means that you're not good or you're bad. So in order to get out of that, she had to shut the box off, right? So the way we form beliefs is all through experiences. Authorities tell us certain things. We do accomplish something, and when we accomplish something, it gives us a sense of knowledge and knowing, and then we form decisions off of that. And sometimes having the knowing, which I say is something we always want, can even form a wall. It starts to form a wall of what is realistic, or things have to be done a certain way, right? So if I go and build a $2 million business, which we are doing right now, I have a knowing of how to build a $2 million business. But I have to be very careful, because that knowing, although it gives me that experience and shows how to navigate other people to doing the same thing, that knowing also is a wall inside my box of reality. Why is the knowing a wall inside the box of reality? Because although I did it, I've only done it one way. So if I was to try to do it again a different way, or I saw someone else doing it again a different way, my box of reality is going to say, no, that's not the way to do it. When in fact, oh, there might be another way to do it. My knowing is actually giving me a limitation in a certain degree. In a certain aspect, the knowing can sometimes be that wall. So we have to be aware of it. Now, I want to make one thing clear here. There's actually nothing wrong with having beliefs or being inside the box. You're always going to be inside the box. Always. And there's a lot of good things that come from this too. So like if your parents encouraged you and told you should go after your dreams and go after other things, you have a belief that it's possible to do that. And that's a great thing. We also have a lot of beliefs. Just having a belief and being inside the box doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Where it becomes a bad thing is when there's a limitation attached to it. Now, to bring this a step further and kind of give you guys a scenario of this showing up so you guys can start to self-recognize, am I in a box that's causing a limitation? Is I can throw two people in the exact same scenario, but I'm going to get two different responses. So, for example, if I told you to go sing in the middle of the mall, and I took one person and I took another person, I said, go sing in the middle of the mall with people walking around you, we could technically get two completely different responses from two different people. One person might be terrified out of their mind, right? And another person might be really excited and look at it as like, wow, this is really exciting. And this is like, oh, I guess I'm out of my comfort zone and I'm so excited to do that. Same scenario, two humans, completely different responses. Why? Because of the box of reality, because of their beliefs. Maybe the person who was really excited was brought up in a household where they were told that new experiences causes growth, and growth is successful, and growth is fun. Getting outside your comfort zone is actually fun. And they've had a lot of experiences like that, and they've had a lot of fun doing it, and they love it. And the other person maybe didn't have that. Maybe the person was told that you just need to be quiet and you shouldn't have attention on you. And then they have this belief box that has been created where it's bad if I get people looking at me, right? Same thing if I tell you need to cook Thanksgiving dinner and you've never cooked a turkey before. One person might look at it as a really fun experience, while the person looks at it as terrified because they think things need to be perfect, right? That's what they were told. That's the belief that was formed in their head. So the belief box is basically all of your experiences, all of your indoctrinations, all of the things that authorities have told you was the right way, all put into your head in a way in which if you operate outside of those, it's going to cause something in your life, usually a negative thing. The problem is that we have to be able to see things differently, to think differently in order to create something differently. And again, this is the same reason why we can take two business owners and put them in the exact same situation, but they're going to experience it in two different ways. So to give you guys another example, if I go into $40,000 in debt while building another business, a second business, I'm not going to experience that the same way someone else will. I might be really excited. It might not even bother me at all. And why is that? Well, because I've had experiences being $40,000 in debt and pulling myself out of it and realizing it's not really that big of a deal. There's no fear there. There's no unknown there. And that is my version of reality. That's the way my mind has created the box of reality. But I can put someone else in that situation and they might freak out and they might panic and they might feel really bad. Again, I can put two business owners in the exact same scenario and they're going to get automatic responses, right? Like I'm not going to think about how do I need to think? How do I want to feel? I just automatically feel like this is fine. The other business owner is going to automatically feel like this is the worst thing ever. So again, it's all because of the subconscious. Your subconscious creates a box of how things are supposed to be, how they're supposed to look, what is realistic, what's not realistic. This is bad, this is good. Your subconscious automatically creates all of these thoughts, again, based off of experiences, things authorities tell you, knowings that you might have, all of that stuff. And it happens automatically. You hardly ever are aware of it or consciously think, how am I supposed to feel around this? Again, while you're listening to this podcast episode, you might be thinking things like, this is interesting, it's not interesting, it's good, it's bad. But you didn't consciously go, how do I know if it's good? How do I know if it's bad? What qualifies good? What qualifies bad? What qualifies interesting? What qualifies not interesting? You don't do that. You just automatically do it. So this is what the box is. The box is the thinking mind. And the problem is the thinking mind can only think from a place of what it already knows, but we don't know how to create something we don't have. And that could be anything. It could be a business. It could be happiness. It could be internal freedom. It could be confidence, right? So my point is trying to think your way to creating something almost never happens because, again, the thinking mind can only think from what it already knows. Now, step two is for me is I really have to start looking at the consequences. So I understand what some of you guys might be thinking, okay, great. Yeah, that's fine, Brandon. I totally get it. How do we fix it? Do I really want to fix it? It sounds like a lot of work. So for me, I always look at the consequences. If we don't start to, or let me phrase it this way. If we only continue to let our thinking control everything, we let the thinking mind control our decisions, we let the thinking mind trying to fix all of our problems, what happens is we kind of let fear control our life because the thinking mind is going to want to stay in what it already knows. That's where your thoughts literally come from. Your thinking mind stems from what you already know. So when you try to think your way out of something, you're going to stick back to what you already know. And the thinking mind, the ego, is not going to want to allow you to go into the unknown, and it creates fear. And so if we constantly just let it control us, we try to think our way out of everything, what we actually do is we let fear control our life. And we actually experience a lot more limitations in our life. Why? Because your thinking is controlled by what you already know or what you think you already know. So if you're constantly listening to that thinking mind, and the thinking mind is going to appear by things like, oh, that's realistic, that's unrealistic. Oh, that's scary, that's not scary. Or the thinking mind's be like, you can do that, you can't do that. Or that person shouldn't do this person should do that. Or this is the way things need to be. That's the thinking mind. Again, the thinking mind is controlled by what you think you already know or what you do already know. And it constantly puts limits on you because it wants to keep you back into what you already know. It doesn't want to let you go into the unknown. So if you're someone who wants to live with limits in your life and you want fear to kind of control your decisions, then you can turn this podcast episode off and go do something else. But for me, thinking about the consequences that are going to come from my life by continually listening to my thinking mind forced me to want to move out of that box. And so let's talk about that. Step number 3. The first thing for me is to identify, because sometimes we don't even know if we're inside the box. And what I mean by this is we have to identify, and let me back up actually. when we identify, what we're really doing is we're identifying the subconscious things that we're not aware of, right? So some of you might be thinking, hey, Brandon, I get it. I don't want to listen to the thinking mind. How do I know if the thinking mind is active right now? Where are the areas in my mind that I need to think out of the box the most? I get this concept. It's starting to make sense. But if we don't know it, where to look? How do we actually find it? Well, the first thing you want to do is identify a limitation in your life. And a limitation can be anything. A limitation can be a limitation of success, a limitation of confidence, a limitation of happiness, a limitation of internal peace. And once you find that limitation, we have to explore the beliefs around that limitation. And this is an example that I shared with our Video 4X students, is that, and the reason I have this example is because it's a real life example for me. This is something that I actually face, is that when my son doesn't pick up his Legos and I tell him to go pick up his Legos and he doesn't do it, I get mad. And I don't think about it. I don't think, should I get mad? Why should I be mad? Do I need to be mad? It's an automatic response. To me, that is the box. I'm operating inside the box. I'm thinking inside the box. And I go, okay, great. In that moment, I had a limitation of happiness. I had a limitation of internal peace. What belief do I have right now that's causing this? And the belief is, my son needs to listen to me and pick up his Legos. I'm the father, he's the son, he needs to listen to me. That's belief number one. The other belief I realized was, I had a belief that his room can't be messy. His room can be messy, why can't it be messy? But I've had a belief, the thinking mind thinks it needs to be clean. So I tell him to go clean up his room. And it's fine if you want a clean room, like you want your kid's room to be clean. I get it. It's fine. But still, that's a belief, right? Because it technically doesn't need to be a clean room. So what I realized in that moment is I realized I had two beliefs. I realized that I had a belief that his room needs to be clean, and number two, a belief that he needs to listen to me. And what I realized after that was, wow, both of those beliefs are dependent on somebody else. Meaning that in order for me, if I keep operating with those beliefs, in order for me to be happy and find internal peace, my son literally needs to clean up his room and listen to me 100% of the time. And the second he doesn't, boom, internal peace is gone. And I don't want that, right? So we have to identify the beliefs. And what we want to do is first identify what's some type of limitation you're experiencing in your life. What's a belief that you're holding that is causing that limitation? And this could be happiness, success, internal peace, all of these things. You have to be able to find the belief that you hold. Now, in that moment, I had a choice to find a new belief. I had a choice in that moment to form a new belief like, well, I didn't do a good enough job making this fun for him. I didn't do a good enough job being creative so that his experience of cleaning up his room was actually fun. And that belief serves me a lot better. And the reason why is because that's dependent on me. I'm responsible for the happiness, not my son. When I take on that new belief, I am 100% responsible for, let's make this fun for him. And then now his room is being clean. If I continue holding the old belief, I literally need him to listen to me 100% of the time in order to find that internal peace and freedom. And that's never going to happen. Like if you have kids, that's never going to happen. So what we want to do is we want to identify where is a limitation in your life? What is the belief that is causing that limitation? And we move on to step number 4, which is shifting your perspective and repeating it over and over again. So this step I actually got from Dr. Shannon Irvin. She says something along the lines of what you repeat is what you create. And just like a belief or version of reality was formed for us through experiences or what our parents said, we can actually start to recreate our own stuff by repeating it over and over and over and over to us, because the subconscious mind will automatically hear, okay, great, this is obviously something that's true. In order to save on energy, we're just going to reprogram it into your head. Okay, it's automatically true. So if you guys are interested in that, I'm actually just going to recommend you go listen to her podcast. So just look Dr. Shannon Irvin, which is spelled Irvine, and just start listening to her stuff. But she talks about putting affirmations on recordings and listening to before you go to bed and after you get up to bed. But really for me, it's shifting perspective. It's looking at a new way, a new belief, a new box of reality that's going to serve you better. So for me, like, let's just pretend I had a wall up on this box. One of the right wall on my reality box was my son needs to listen to me because I'm the father and he's the son. It just got shifted to I need to make this fun for him so that he will clean up his room. Well, I just shifted the wall of my reality box. It expanded, right? So the box of reality expanded. And now that's my new normal. And if I repeat that enough times, guess what happens? Automatically, when he doesn't clean his room, I automatically go to the thought, how do I make this fun for him? Oh yeah, I'm going to tell him Superman cleans his room in 5 minutes. Can he beat Superman? Oh, so much fun. And you know what starts to happen? Complete regain of my internal peace and my happiness. Why? Because his room gets cleaned. There's no arguments. He's having fun. I'm having fun. Versus friction. And all I'm doing in that moment is recognizing here's the box of reality in which I live, which is formed by all these beliefs that was created by my subconscious. And now I'm just identifying a limitation, the belief, and changing the belief out. And then it becomes my new normal. And guess what? Whoosh, the box is expanded. And you guys can do this for anything and everything. Now, the next question that you might be asking is, great, Brandon, I understand how to do this for my own personal life and maybe my relationships and things like that. But how does this apply to business? And that's a great question. And that leads me to step number 5, which is the silence. And you guys probably hear me talk about this all the time. In fact, we did a podcast episode giving you the silence exercise. Now, the reason why the silence exercise is so vital is because it requires you to turn the thinking mind off. And what I mean by this is that you don't go in an area that's quiet. You can be in the middle of New York City and you can quiet your thinking mind and you have silence in your head. You will be amazed at what appears there. Now, the reason why this is so important is because, again, your mind can only think from what it knows. But if we turn off what it thinks it knows, it leaves the space for the answers to actually pop in. The silence shuts the box off. The box is always going to be running, right? Your thinking mind is always going to be running, which is your subconscious. Your subconscious, your thinking mind is always running. And then when you turn it off, you know what's shut off? The borders, the boundaries. What's realistic, what's not realistic. Everything gets shut off. And when everything shuts off, the box of reality disappears. And it's expansion. It's endless. There's no borders or boundaries stopping you from creating what it is that you want to create. When I came up with the Video 4X effect, that's what happened. Shut the mind off and pop. Ideas came flooding in. The example I always give is when you guys journal and you're so into your writing, you're not thinking about anything. The thinking mind is off. You're so focused on what you're creating that you get so many ideas hitting you that you can't even write them down fast enough. And I'm willing to bet that the best ideas that you guys have had in your life did not come because you thought your way to them. They came when the mind was silent. Maybe you're watching a movie, or maybe you're deep in conversation listening to someone, and then all of a sudden, pop, an idea hits you. Or you're running, or you're walking, or jogging, or riding a bike, or you're in the shower, or something. When the thinking mind is off, I'm willing to bet that that's when you get your best ideas. And you did not think your way to those ideas. And that right there is proof that you can only think from what you know. So if you want to gain something that you don't know yet, you want to sit in silence and turn your mind off. But when you get the ideas, this is the most important piece. I hope you guys are listening. When that idea hits you, when you get those genius bombs, that's what I'm calling genius bombs. When you get those and they hit you, you know what starts back up? The thinking mind starts back up. Oh, that's stupid. Oh, that's risky. Oh, that isn't realistic. Oh, you're going to get judged for that. Oh, this person's going to make fun of you. Oh, this person's going to call you out. Oh, this person that, and this is good. And you don't want to do that because that's bad. So be aware that when you sit in the silence and the idea pops you, the thinking mind's going to turn back on and it's going to try to destroy that idea that hit you. So it's going to take your personal power in order to move forward with the ideas that hit you. But I'm promising you, this is where you find really powerful messaging. This is where you find really powerful pivots. This is where you determine whether or not you need to make a change inside of your business. This is where you make a change of going after something that's going to make you happy, or getting in alignment, or being fulfilled and finding your purpose. That is where all of this stuff comes from. You have to use your personal power to act on the ideas that come into the silence. And again, I'm going to bring it back to my example of when my son was not listening to me about picking up his broom. I recognized the limitation. I recognized the belief. I changed the belief, but I didn't really know what to change it to. You know how I determined what to change it to? I sat in the silence for 10 seconds. I've done it so many times I can kind of go in and out of it a lot easier than I used to. I've practiced silence for a few years now. I shut the mind off for about 10 seconds. Boom, Superman. Oh yeah, okay, I'm gonna tell him about Superman, and tell him Superman cleans his room in 5 minutes and see if he can beat Superman. And you know what? He went along and tried to beat Superman. It was fun. We had a great time. But that came in the silence. A lot of the things that I'm talking to you about right now can go a little deep and be a little woo-woo, and I'm really hoping that I'm explaining everything the right way. And as soon as I had all this stuff and I journaled it down, I outlined this podcast episode, the thinking mind popped back up. And I literally had thoughts even this morning before recording this. People are going to think you're crazy. You're not going to explain it the right way. You're just going to confuse people even more, blah, 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 blah. And it was the thinking mind trying to stop me from going into the unknown. The thinking mind goes, oh, we don't really know about this. We're not really sure if this is a good idea. And all that stuff starts to come up. So use my personal power, doing it anyways. Now, if you're the type of person who's like, Brandon, this is great. This is a little much. I don't want to get overwhelmed. Go ahead and end this podcast now. If you're the type of person who does not like to get into the woo or go down the rabbit hole, go ahead and end this podcast now, because I'm going to take this a step further. If you're someone who likes talking about beings and dimensions, spirits, ghosts, all of that stuff, then keep on listening, because I'm going to go into one more step. I'm going to talk about one more version of the box that we experience. Now, we have 5 senses. So this is step number 6. If you want to go into the woo, we're going to talk about how to snap out of the box of the world. Okay. So what I just did in the first 5 steps was giving you how to get out of the thinking mind and discover the answers you need. Now what we're going to talk about is how do we use this same concept to go outside of the world that we think exists. What I mean by this is society and this third dimensional plane that we're in. So right now, the way that we see the world, like, I see a plant over here, I see Matt over here, I have water inside this mug. The only reason I know any of that exists is because of my 5 senses. I have the sense of smell and sight and touch and feel, and we have our 5, I can hear things. We have the sense, our 5 senses. The only reason we know any of this stuff exists is because the 5 senses allow us to be aware of it, right? So I know this pen right here exists because I can feel it. I don't think it really has a smell, but I can also see it. If I didn't have the ability to feel and touch and see, then this pen would not exist to me. It would still be here, but it wouldn't be in my field of awareness. This is a little gross, but Joe Rogan talks about the fart test. He says if someone farts, and you didn't have the ability to smell, you wouldn't even know it existed, right? But we know it does. Because the sense of smell allows it to come into our awareness. So hopefully that's making sense. Things do not exist to you if you don't have the sense to be aware of it. Let me say that a different way. Things only exist to you because the 5 senses bring them into your awareness. I think that's a better way to say it. Now, where I'm going with this is that there are more senses that we don't have. And let's just think, and if you don't believe that, let's just pretend for a second. Let's pretend there's actually a 6th sense, a seventh sense, an eighth sense, a ninth sense that humans just don't have. What do you think exists all around us that's just not in our awareness, that we are not aware of? And we've all heard things of like ghosts and spirits and people seeing things like that and stuff like that. We've all heard of psychics and mediums who can communicate with the dead. Some people think it's crazy. And it's like, well, what if they just have a sense or ability that we don't have, so that communication is in our awareness? And what if you have that ability and you're just not using it because we've been told that that's not possible? For example, what do you guys think intuition is? Do you think intuition is just made up thing of like to keep you safe or to give you guidance? Or do you think it's the spirit guide? Like, what do you think it is? We all had it. We've all have intuition. We all have gut feelings on certain things. What if that is a sixth sense that we have that we've been told our entire life that doesn't exist? What if we leaned into it and started to cultivate it, started to use it a lot more and to get it stronger? And the reason why I bring this up is because if you look at some of the most successful people out there, what is the one thing that they tell you? Almost all of them will tell you, I just listen to my gut. Mark Cuban says it. And by the way, Mark Cuban is one person who's like doesn't even want to touch the woo-woo, but he talks about his intuition all the time. He talks about his gut. And when I'm bringing this up is I want you guys to start looking at what senses do you have that have been shut down because people told you that's not the right way, that you can actually use in business. Things like intuition. And if you guys can start to cultivate that and start to listen it a lot more, you will be surprised at what starts to appear for you. So for me, I look at any sense. I don't know how many senses we have, but I'm like, I love this stuff. So I'm like, what if we have 9 senses or 10 senses or all this stuff? And I do work with the shaman, same shaman that, Jim Fortin's brother-in-law, or Jim Fortin works with, his brother-in-law. And my awareness for certain things starts to go up. Things like, I have seen beings and spirits of people that have passed over and have had communication in my head of them popping up, and all that stuff appears in my awareness. And you guys have it too. Like those times where you feel like someone's watching you, or like all of a sudden you get this feeling that someone's staring at you. What if that's another sense that you have and something's finally coming to awareness? What if you cultivated that? The world around you would start to change. And so for me, a lot of things have changed. A lot of different awarenesses have changed. I've seen, I walk past plants and I walk past trees and I can see how connected they all are because I've been working on developing a sense to be able to see that. I understand the power of respecting plants and earth and all those things, even to the point now where before I pull an orange or something, I give thanks back to the tree because I can start to see all of it. I start to use more senses than just that 5 sense box that was created. Now, the reason why I bring all of this up is because I think you can be a much more powerful business owner if you start to evolve past the 3D. And what I mean by the 3D is basically living a life based off your subconscious and your 5 senses combined together. So when our subconscious automatically starts to form decisions, automatically starts to say, this is the way the world is, then you combine that with, the only things that exist are the things that I can see, feel, sense, and use my 5 senses. We start to create this like box of the world. And for me, it becomes very easy to take bigger risks or to create whatever I want to create because I look at the 3D world. I look at society as like a 5 sense box and a subconscious box. And when I operate outside of that, I feel like I'm in a different world. I view things so differently. I see the beauty and everything. And then when I come back into the 3D world, it's very easy for me to create. It's very easy for me to go create what I want to create, not be bothered by what's realistic or not, because the second I go home or unplug from the internet, I'm back out of that box. And everything is so expansive. And unless you've actually experienced that, you probably don't fully grasp what I'm trying to say. But my advice to you is to start to look outside of your subconscious in the 5 sense box that was created for you. And maybe that's just listening to your intuition more and just seeing what goes from there. Maybe that is exploring those feelings and shutting off the thinking mind when you feel like someone's watching you. Maybe it's a spirit guide. Maybe there is someone watching you. Doesn't mean it's bad. Maybe there is someone there trying to help you or give you a message. Maybe it is the universe or God or whatever it is you want. All I'm saying It's when you start exploring outside of the box of the subconscious and the box of the five senses. Society and the 3D world start to become very easy to create inside of, because you get a sense of expansion. You start to see very easily how controlled you were by other people or society norms or the way that things have always been. And it's very easy for you to go operate outside of those society norms, those industry norms. It's very easy for you to operate outside of the fear of judgment from other people, because you see where their fear was coming from. Their fear was created from their subconscious in the 5 sense box. And when you're not trapped or chained down by those things anymore, you're not really affected by people who are still chained down by those things anymore. And I'm going to leave it there before I go even deeper. But I really hope that if you did stay through that 6th step, that this is starting to make sense. You put it into practice. At the very least, I really hope that you guys do the first 5 things in today's podcast episode, which is realizing that there's a box in the first place, putting yourself in the consequences of what happens if you remain in that box, identify limitation, and then identify the belief that's causing that limitation, shift your perspective and repeat it over and over and over again with a new belief that serves you better, and then sit in the silence, because that tears down the thinking mind, and sit in the silence as much as you can to get the ideas that are going to allow you to create the thing you want to create. It allows you to create the things that are outside the box. And I really hope that you guys do at least those 5 things. So what I would love for you guys to do is hop over into our Facebook group. If it is up, if it's not, it will be soon. It's called the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast, and share your biggest takeaway. Any questions that you guys might have, go ahead and post them in the group, because this podcast episode, I understand, could be a little outside some people's comfort zones. It could be a little bit outside of totally making sense. So I want to make sure that you guys really grasp what came through today, because this literally shifted everything for me on so many different levels, and I want it to shift for you guys. So hop over there, let us know what you think, let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you guys on another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.